Hey folks, how's it going? This is Seth Williams. Today I'm talking with Micah from US Lead List. I wanted to record this video because I discovered his website and service recently, and they offer kind of an interesting thing. They generate very specific lists that focus on either surviving spouses or trusts or interfamily transfers before death or pre-probate leads. And for various reasons, these types of leads very often are motivated sellers. And they're kind of in a unique situation. Usually somebody has died or is about to die, the person that owned that property originally. And because of that, there's a good chance that property is going to be sold. I just wanted to bring Mike on, just ask a bunch of questions about this. When I saw his little demo video on his website, I was like, I feel like there's something here. I feel like people in our audience might be interested to hear how this works. So Micah, welcome. How's it going?
Oh, it's great. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time and hopping on. It's always fun to talk about. It's not always fun to talk about death. It's always fun to talk about real estate. And this does pertain to real estate and can be a very profitable niche.
Beyond what I just said there, what else do people need to know about what US Lead List does?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. At its core, we're basically like data as a subscription. We are experts in my own mind and our ambition to be the best at aligning death and real estate ownership and connecting those two pieces. There's tons of data to show when someone passes away, the likelihood of them selling that property is substantially higher than, just normal aggregated data, be it absentee owner or, whatever it may be. And so it's just a good list if you can figure out how to get traction in it. I say that in that way because it's a little bit different. There's a lot more emotions at play. There's a lot more logistics that you have to work through. But if you can kind of line those pieces up, it can be a really, really great spot to land.
Do we start with pre-probate leads, or which type of lead list is most common, or what do you think is your best thing that most people would be interested in?
So all those things that you mentioned, we combine all of those things together and we just call it the inheritance list. So it's actually all just one list, but those are the four kind of main segments of it. And so if you were to say, hey, Mike, I want to list in this county, you're basically getting an aggregate of all of those leads. And so I treat them all in a similar fashion. When I'm marketing to them, when I'm working these deals, I treat them all the same way. They're not segmented in any particular way.
So we've got these four categories I mentioned, which you just told me before the call. We got surviving spouses, we've got trusts, interfamily transfers before death, and pre-probate. So in all these situations, how did these even end up on your radar? What has happened in the public records that you're able to somehow see and be like, oh, here we go. Here's a situation that's interesting. Has somebody died, but the property hasn't been sold yet? Is that what's going on?
That's exactly right. Yep. The only exclusion to that they might sell is if it's an interfamily transfer where they're transferring it before the death because they kind of see that, the end is coming near. And so they're like, son, here's my rental portfolio. I'm going to sell those to you for, whatever the minimum transfer amount is. And that's kind of a way to bypass those estate taxes and kind of dodge the bullet there.
So are you able to see this because it is a non-arm's length transaction, or like the property was sold for like $1 or something? Is that how you're able to understand what's going on?
Yeah, so we use a bunch of different inputs to build this, but in that case specifically, we're looking at if someone did own a property and they sold it to someone else, it will be marked as an arm's length transaction. But that connection isn't always perfect, is what I found. We deal with this all the time. And so national flat files, data aggregators, like it's full of errors. There's just no way around it. Like data is not always good data. And so what we do is we do a secondary process where we're looking for the actual relatives and, establishing that connection in-house rather than relying on that external input.
When you say flat file, what does that mean?
Literally, it's all of the real estate ownership across the entire nation. They sell this product to PropStream, Batch Leads, big companies like that are using it to show all that personal information across the entire nation. We license that national file and we use that to align these data points. And that's kind of one of the foundational building blocks of our business, of our data. We build from there.
So these pre-probate situations or interfamily transfers, is that part of that flat file, or is that a separate thing that you're bringing in to layer on top of it to understand what's going on?
Yeah, so we look at obit information, we look at actual probate filings, We buy a bunch of government data. The government keeps track of who passes away. And so that's, our initial input. And then we overlay that with that national file and build, with those two data points together, what we call our inheritance list. And that's how we're doing it. And folks, if people are actually really interested in doing this, like, you can do it. You can go into the obits and you can do a lot of this stuff. You can go into the probates. And, I did a whole video basically training on how to do this. The thing is like, it's a lot of work. So like, if you don't have money, but you have time, like, great practice. Like I'm happy to, help people, show them, point them in the right direction. Like my goal in my business is to bring value. Like real estate has changed the trajectory of my life. And I don't want, someone's ability to not afford our service, to not have that opportunity to see that change and get a crack at leveling up their lifestyle, what they have and what they get to do.
So fundamentally, like, why go after these kinds of people on this kind of list versus anyone else? Like, how much more likely are you to get a deal here versus just going after some other more general segment of, I don't know if you have any like split testing data or like comparisons, like, yeah, we got this percentage more deals from this list versus something else. Like, is it a huge higher likelihood of getting something good?
What I would say to that is that, when I'm looking at land, I don't have as good of numbers on as far as comparison, but, in the house space, I'm probably spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000, $3,500 to get a contract. But what I find is that my average net profit it's over 40K. And, the average net profit of, most deals in the wholesaling space, flipping, yada, yada, it's closer to, that 20,000. I just find that I end up doing bigger deals. And so for me, like I would rather do less deals, but better deals. And, just kind of that work smarter, not harder situation. And so that's been a big reason why I focus on it, why I think it's good. I mean, and to be fair, like I actually bought this company. I didn't know anything about it until, 4 years ago. I transacted on this company 4 years ago. A couple of guys in their 70s were trying to get out. And I was like, this is awesome. It was in the middle of COVID. I had, tons of time. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go down this road. And so I bought the company and I just started pushing in. And it's been an awesome, fun, exciting journey. So certainly I am, my perspective is a little different because I live and breathe and, I'm always working to optimize. But yeah, probate deals, like we kind of already covered, if you can get through kind of the static and transact and figure out how to work with these people, the deals are bigger. The likelihood of them selling is a lot higher. And it works good for, especially I've found people who have multiple kind of tools in their belt. If they do land, if they're an agent, if they're an investor, like all three of those, like that's kind of the perfect storm because you never know what part of that estate they're going to just literally want to, cut their losses on, get off their plate, monetize it and move on as fast as they can.
And in a minute here, I think we're going to do a screen share. You're just going to show us a little bit of what these lists look like. And because you've got a demo for this on your website, which by the way, I'll link to that website beneath this video if people want to check it out. But it's an interesting demo because it kind of shows how you provide information that you can't just get from any other normal data service. Like it's kind of privileged information, which I thought was pretty cool. But I'm curious, what does this list cost? Like, do you charge per line item, or is it like a flat fee for the whole thing? Or help us understand the cost of using this.
Yeah, definitely. So how we do it is it's basically like a data as a subscription. So we charge $1.50 a record, and let's say there's 100 records in your county. We only sell it by the county for houses, and so there's 100 records. It costs $150. Next month it might be 80, it might be 70, it might be 120. It's whatever is in your area. That's what you get charged for, and it's just an open-ended subscription.
And for the land investors out there, I think I heard you say how does that work if you are looking for land deals?
Yeah, so we segment the land out of it separately, and we sell it by the states. And so, I didn't mention this just a second ago, but like in any given county for our our normal data, we only allow 3 investors. We don't want to oversaturate. Like I really feel like how and what we're doing in this data service is better than anything that you can get out there. It's the most inclusive. It covers, the most broad amount. So we only sell that 3 times. With the land, we do it a little bit different. So we sell it by the states, and there's only one person who gets that information. And as a result, the cost per state is a lot higher. It's a pretty spendy product in the neighborhood of, goes kind of from 1,000. Our most expensive states are 20,000 for a year-long service of our data, including everything that has, basically we've generated since we've started, about 2 years of back data. And so you do get a lot of data. It's kind of not a launching off point for most people. This is someone who's like knows their area, will grind into it, and can work really hard at the land.
So like, why is it that you don't segment it by the county for land? Like, is there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason is that it's so small. So if
when you say small, you mean the number of people that want it are small, or the number of parcels are small?
Number of actual parcels in each county. So like Dane County, which is where I'm at right now, where I live. If you were to go and look into our database, we're talking like 10, 20 leads over 3 or 4 months, like really small amount of data. And so we found it was better to just use a large geographic location. Usually there's a few really good hotspots within a state that you can hit and focus on those. And then, everything else kind of in between are those maybe smaller, not as profitable transactions, but you buy them at a lower price point. And
so what we're talking about here, we're not talking about the total parcels of land. We're talking about the parcels of land that fit one of these profiles where there's a pre-probate situation. So that's why the number is small.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So I guess that's just a little tip. If anybody's interested in this for land or houses, talk to Micah ASAP, because you might be the only person to get it. And if you don't get it, maybe you'll get in line to be the next person. So
yep, totally.
But I do know this was something I found years ago when I was trying to find deals on farmland. I found it was basically the closest thing to impossible to find hugely discounted deals on farmland, because farmland is making money for people and it doesn't take hardly anything to do it. But one of the more likely situations where you could find a deal is in one of these probate situations where like the original farmer who was working the ground has died. They've given it to their children. Children don't want it, or it's coming up to that kind of thing. And so if you wanted a quick way to get to the bottom of those situations, say if you're looking for like large tillable acreage and that kind of thing, this could be one way to do it. And it sounds like it's kind of spendy to get that, but the alternative would be sending just tons of marketing messages to people that will never do it. And I don't know, this might kind of get to the bottom of it a lot better if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and like we have clients who specifically are like even large developments. It's like they're buying 40-acre parcels, and they've done well with our data. It's that's just their sole focus. They're looking for this tiny little buy box, and as far as I know, there's at least a few developments going right now because of this. And like I was mentioning before we started recording, like we've got small subdivides that I'm doing locally. We've got a bunch of deals in the pipeline that will get developed. It's just getting people to the right price point. And it's so funny because, we touched on it a little bit, but talking to these people, connecting with them, it's so much different than just kind of a desperate seller. Normally you have to kind of get the emotions out of the way, and you have to do a good job of building rapport. And a lot of people say that, but in this niche, to me, rapport is the most leverageable way to create an opportunity for yourself. And so, my team's inbound calls, like on average, they're over a half an hour when, on that first call, if they want to sell, like we're not offering prices, we're not doing anything. We're just asking open-ended questions. What's the situation here? And then, they give you information, and then you ask another open-ended question and you just listen. And, it's so funny because in our world of like, fast, easy, quick, like that kind of conversation doesn't really exist. And so when you build that skill, it translates into everything, your marriage, your kids' lives, all those things. But especially with these people who have lost something that is irreplaceable, if you can be a good listener and help show up, like, for example, one guy who it's actually in the town I'm in, just right on the edge. He called about it. We sent him a mailer. He came back and he's like, well, I really think it's worth 2 million. It's like 55 acres. This was vacant land. 55 acres, right on the edge of town, right in the path of development. And we're like, no, sorry, man. Like, no way. Like, we totally respect you. Like, well, we could even try retail, but I don't think there's any possibility of getting that. And so, for weeks, we've been just kind of going back and forth, just talking to this guy. It's not about like us transacting the deal. It's just about us providing value. And 2 days ago, he came back and he's like, hey, you know what? I would take $1 million. Would you take $1 million? And then that's still actually not in our buy box. We're at like 800K. If he comes down to 800K, we'll transact. But it really helps if you put relationship first and then let the person negotiate the deal themselves.
Have you found, is there less competition when going after these kinds of deals versus just a more general list that you get from PropStream or something like that?
It's a hard thing to aggregate, but I do find and feel that like, speed to close isn't as needed. We do PPL, we do PPC as well. And I find with these leads, when they're coming in, I'm the only person talking to them. They're usually not shopping a bunch of other people. They just responded to my letter because I hit them with the right message at the right time. And again, it's like, this comes back to, rapport. If you build rapport right, they want to do business with you. They feel like they need you because they like you. And, that's just classic business, right? We do business with who we like. So I believe so. I think that's definitely true. It's definitely a different vibe than you get on, say a PPC lead.
Going back a couple questions about getting a land list versus a list of houses. So how do you know which ones are land? Because I know a lot of times in these data services, like they're not necessarily right. You could say I want vacant land, but there's actually properties where a house was just built there in the past year, or maybe somebody at the county classified it the wrong way or something. Is there something you're doing? Are you kind of following those same filters? So like you might get houses, even though it's land.
You might get houses. I mean, and I have had a decent amount of my land investors. They're like, they called back and, they've actually got 3 parcels of land and one of them has a house on it. It's like, I don't want anything to do with houses. We talked about it earlier. There's no such thing as perfect data until maybe AI rules the world and there's, 0 human error and the frequency is, nanoseconds of changing. There's always going to be misses. And so, I think it's funny and some people may say that like I might be doing myself a disservice by admitting that, but I deal with data all day long. I look at it, we work through it. It's a matter of best practices and doing the best that you can. But if anyone says they have perfect data, they're lying. And that's definitely not what I'm saying.
So aside from like just the importance of rapport building, is there anything else just like fundamentally different that we should be doing when going after these types of leads? Like whether it's the marketing channel, direct mail versus texting versus ringless voicemail versus cold calling. Like, does one work better than the other? Or like, is there something we should or shouldn't be saying in our initial messages to them? Or any other thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So in my experience, direct mail has been the most profitable channel of marketing to these folks. That said, we do cold call and we also do text. And so, we do deals on those other 2 channels. Cold calling's the next best. Texting is the least profitable. It's still worth doing. And that's part of my business. As far as messaging and how to kind of open the conversation, I will say I've got clients who they send a letter to the effect of, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know this is a hard time, but should you need to sell your property, I'm here to help. And that's how they kind of open and offer their service. This actually, ironically, works great for them. They're like long-term customers and they keep on, asking for more data. But the trade-off for that is that the amount of hate and dissatisfaction and frustration that they get from the aggregate total of people who they don't work with is immense. And so if you're a public figure, if you don't want to deal with that at scale, I would, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend actually doing that with any of my clients. How I do it is I basically treat them like any other lead. I open, I have a mailing sequence that I follow. I open with a really vague letter that says, hey, I have a question about your property. That's it. You get callbacks. And first off, like my callback rate, I'm close to 10, 11% on that initial mailer, which makes sense, right? I have to triage a bunch of stuff that, doesn't actually transact. But I like it because I get to talk to those people who might sell that would have not called me had they known what I wanted to do. And then, from there, I get a lot more direct, classic kind of yellow letter. I want to buy your property, and then a more business suited one. Basically, once they call and if they're a maybe or yes, I open the conversation by, well, tell me what the situation is. I kind of already mentioned that. Just ask open-ended questions and go from there. After that, I don't talk about death. I don't bring that up in my own business. I don't want to deal with all that hate. And then, from there, open-ended questions, just try and gather information. And two, that's that hidden force, like whoever can in a negotiation has the most information usually wins. And so if you're a really good listener, like this is just a tactical play to get more understanding of how to be the most valuable person.
I'm curious, how often do these properties have title issues by nature of the fact that they might be pre-probate leads or in a process where somebody has multiple heirs? Is it more common that people are like, oh, there's this deal, but there's all these title issues to sort through?
It definitely is more common than typical transactions. Where you deal with most of that is in the pre-probate stuff. Probate, if it's seasoned or should go through probate but hasn't. Yeah, multiple heirs. Last year, I had to basically pay for probate, help this kid who lost his mom. He was just like, party drug house, and carry the whole transaction. I literally had to do everything for this kid to buy this property. So yes, for sure. Title problems is an issue. Multiple owners is definitely an issue. And, like I mentioned earlier, especially when you start getting into, millions of dollars, there's a lot of feuds and kind of back and forth between people trying to figure out what the best thing to do for the property is.
So you can get this list of houses by the county or land by the state. I'm curious, can these leads be filtered at all before getting the list? Say I only want to go after commercial properties. I don't care about houses. I don't care about land either. I just want commercial buildings. When you say houses, does that just mean anything with a structure on it? Or is that literally single family residential?
1 through 4. So we do have commercial leads. It's a subset. Again, it's just, we found it hard. If someone wanted to do it, we can talk to them about it. When you kind of niche down onto specific property types, it just ends up being a really small amount of data. And so, again, I did a national or a statewide campaign for commercial properties in Wisconsin. And that's great. We actually did look at some deals. We made some offers. We didn't transact on anything. Came really close. Actually, title issues prevented storage units that we were going to buy. Anyway, so there's definitely opportunity there. But on the commercial side, that's something that we would kind of handwork with you if someone wanted to do that.
The reason I'm asking that question is I'm thinking about, I don't know if you know who Logan Fulmer is. I've interviewed him a couple times on the podcast, but his whole strategy is specifically going after properties with title issues on purpose. Because everybody else is running away from him, he's running towards them, and he specializes in cleaning up these kinds of title problems. And sometimes it's a huge mess and it takes years to get figured out. But because he's willing to go after that stuff and nobody else is, there's pretty much no competition, and they can make a ton of money on it if you sort of become a specialist at this. And this seems like a possible way to drill down to those properties that have those problems if you were trying to solve those kinds of issues. So sounds like the answer is it can be done, but not many people do that because there's not many leads that fit that profile.
Yeah. And again, if you were to go for a wider geography, let's say a state, then yes, definitely doable. I think you would have enough data to get good traction and to be able to get, because, again, this all comes down, it's a numbers game, right? You put enough touch points, enough pieces in a mail in the pipeline, you're going to get responses back. And so it's basically just getting going data to transact and do a deal.
Do you have any insights on what these offers should look like? Is it we're going to offer 50% of market value, or is it just a case-by-case thing? You got to talk to the person and figure out the situation and evaluate all the specifics of the property and then come up with something. Do you have some standard formula you follow, or?
So it depends. Land obviously is different than houses, but for houses, in my negotiating process, I'm building rapport first. I'm getting a point where they're telling me all about the property. And once we start talking about money, 95% of the time, I don't go first. They like me enough, they trust me enough, they say the number that they want. And either it's, below what I'm asking, my anchor price that I was going to offer, or, it's not, it's too high. And from there, usually what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, well, that price is too high. I can't pay that. I pin it on other people, not myself, because, I really value and covet my relationship with this person that I've built so far. Other people in the area are paying, 60%. Usually 60% is what I'm pushing for as an anchor price. If it ends up being 65 on houses, that works for me. Land, I'm typically starting at 50% of ARV.
Do you want to show us what one of these lists look like, just so we kind of have an idea for
absolutely.
what a person would get?
So this is Central Florida file that I did for a single family investor. This has a bunch of data in it as well. So we do back data packages as well outside of our current subscription. So these leads came from January of 2022. It's expressed there in that file column. Yeah, so this is basically how it starts. Mail name, when I'm marketing to these folks, sending actual direct mail, I like to use the last name. I don't like to nominate that person by their first name. I just want to talk to whoever. And so pretty much how this works is, if we go over, this is just, parcel numbers, information, legal description, pretty standard stuff. And then we build out skip tracing for these folks. So this is the deceased person. Actually, we skip trace them. Usually not, when I'm texting, we'll text all these cell phone numbers. And I did do a deal one time with a deceased person's phone number. The wife kept his cell phone and responded it, which was funny. So typically I don't work that part of the list. But anyway, yeah, we do a good amount of skip tracing service. The spouses, if we can find them, they're all here. And then we bring in relatives too. So, the problem with kind of connecting with these folks, if someone did pass away and it actually is going to have to go through probate, you don't know who the right person to talk to is. So, it could be a brother, it could be a niece, it could be a good friend. And so we build out, three separate relatives on folks who during the ownership period, they had their mail sent to this property, and we skip trace those folks as well.
Mm-hmm. And in your demo video, you said that 80% of your deals come from people with the little AP thing, which means additional properties.
Yeah. So I'll show you that in just a second. I'll pull up a second list. That's true with land. You can see here on average, it's funny. It's pretty consistent across the US. Every individual owns about 2 separate properties, but it's not split up like that. So you'll see a lot of, these people, they've got, one parcel here. This count represents the parcels. This person's got 2, there's 3, there's 4 down here in it. There's some that just have an immense land portfolio. They've got, 80, 100 parcels. And so those people who have, a higher concentration of land parcels, and the same is true with houses with the AP property, they're much more likely to transact, especially as a group, to get that off of their plate, out of their hair, and do a deal.
That is interesting looking at this statewide file. I think I saw in Alachua County up there, there's like 14 total parcels that are land that have one of these situations going on. So it's just interesting to see.
Yeah.
A lot more land than that in Alachua County.
Yeah. This was just one list. So this was this is a 1 month in this county. So, but yeah, not a lot of land. That's kind of, again, why we packaged it up the same way. Okay, well, let me minimize that. And here is the properties for single family homes. This is a listing for that. So again, pretty much similar format. But what you were talking about, the AP count here, this is what you were mentioning. So, again, we're figuring out where this person lived, and we're searching the entire nation for the mailing address, where other properties that have the same mailing address as this. And what we get is, it's just really interesting. There's, 20% of the population that has, an additional property. And these are the ones where, I've made most of my money, like, multiple 6-figure deals on these people who are just, they're just looking to dump it. And so you see here, the Bradwells, they got, 5 properties here that they own in the area. And usually there's just a lot less emotion attached to those, they're just their investment tools. And so if you can, again, build good rapport, connect with these people, you can solve a really big problem for these folks, which is, depending, like if whoever managed them passed away, someone new has to manage that. That's a big headache. They weren't familiar. They're not trained. If you can come in and offer them a great solution, and monetize these things for them at a favorable price for yourself, it can be literally just a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah. Now, do you indicate which ones have delinquent taxes on this list somewhere?
We do, yeah. So
and how reliable is that? I know sometimes that's pretty hit or miss with data services like this.
Yeah. So again, I'm not going to lie, like the tax delinquency, because we do get this from a flat file. The best place to get tax delinquent is from your county, working individual counties or whatever your area, go directly to the source, because that's where everyone's building this information from anyway. And the time it takes to get, these data points represented on this file, this one specifically it takes longer. And so, this property's got delinquency for the year of 2022. It might be for 2023 as well, but it's not expressed yet. Another field that we build out here is the vacancy. And that is a lot better, and it's good data. This comes straight from USPS, because, if a property is denoted as vacant, they don't deliver mail to it. And so I have a whole separate way that we reach out to these folks, basically cold calling, texting, looking for anyone that I can talk to about who's the rightful owner of this property. Because if the home address is vacant and someone passed away, the likelihood of this thing selling, it's really, really high. And so if I can, go through it, and this is classic zombie property, right? It should be probated, but it's not. And so if I can do this right, basically I'm finding money for whoever the rightful owner is, and I have to help them through this process. And, if you can do that, you bring so much value, right? You're like, you literally found this person $50, $100, $200,000. You kind of be the point person to get them through that process. And so again, very, very valuable channel for deals.
REtipster does have an affiliate link if people want to support REtipster and use this service. It's retipster.com/US lead list. So USLEADLIST. But is that the best place to go, or anything else they should do if they want to explore this further?
If they're interested, if some of this is ringing true for them, I think the best way, just go check out the site, book a call, and see if this kind of fits into what you want to do for marketing. If this is a niche that you want to focus on, that's probably the best way to discover and see kind of how it works, costs associated, and go from there.
Appreciate you sharing the knowledge and the intel, Micah, and hope the listeners and viewers out there got something out of this. We will talk to you next time.